The official story paints a very gentle picture. Princess Beatrice was the loyal youngest daughter, a quiet helper, a dutiful shadow. She never complained, she never asked for her own life. She sat beside the black-clad Queen Victoria until the very end. The system looked almost sweet from the outside. A widowed queen and the affectionate child who stayed by her side. Court records and private letters rip holes in that picture. They show a mother who treated a grown woman like emotional property. They show a daughter pressed into service as unpaid secretary, nurse, and censor. The cost was a living woman's entire adulthood. The reward was a sanitized queen for future generations. Beatrice was the 9th child, the last daughter, born in 1857. Victoria was already frayed by constant childbirth and public scrutiny. When Prince Albert died in 1861, something in Victoria collapsed. It never fully returned. She withdrew into deep mourning, clinging to whichever child stayed closest. Beatrice was only 4. Her mother called her baby. The Queen simply never stopped using that name. Letters written decades later still use the same word. It was as if time had frozen Beatrice in place. Other daughters married. They escaped. They negotiated their freedom. Only one girl became the permanent comfort. In reality, the possessiveness ran deep. It warped Beatrice's entire future. Other daughters had already paid their price. Victoria had interfered in all their lives. She insulted Alice for working too hard. She nagged Helena and Louise for wanting independence. Victoria did not only want control over Beatrice. Victoria wanted permanence, no marriage, no separate household, no rival for Beatrice's attention. Court accounts note that Victoria openly declared Beatrice must remain unmarried. The Queen announced it as fact, not suggestion. The message was clear to everyone. This daughter belonged to Victoria more than to herself. Female dynamics did the rest. Older sisters, already struggling under Victoria's criticism, did not fight hard for Beatrice. They wrote polite letters, then returned to their own complicated lives. They complained about Victoria's demands in their own houses. In front of Victoria, they simply nodded and changed the subject. Beatrice grew up surrounded by women who understood the rule. The Queen's needs came first, every single time. After Albert's death, Victoria poured her grief into daily rituals, black dresses, shrines to her dead husband in every residence. Beatrice's entire childhood happened inside that mausoleum. School hours squeezed between mourning ceremonies and dictated correspondence. By her teens, she was not just a daughter. She was an extra pair of hands. Victoria's letters multiplied constantly. Ambassadors, prime ministers, relatives, all wrote to the Queen. She answered almost everyone. When Victoria's eyesight began to fail, the demands intensified further. Cataracts clouded her vision. Reading became painful. Writing grew slow and tiring. The solution was simple and devastating. Beatrice became the Queen's eyes and hands. Royal archives contained page after page in Beatrice's neat handwriting. These were letters from the Queen. They were physically written by Beatrice, notes to ministers, private messages to relatives. Even passages in the Queen's own journal appeared in Beatrice's script. The physical strain alone was considerable. Hours each day were spent taking dictation. No shorthand, no typewriter. Just relentless ink on paper. Her shoulders stiffened, her fingers ached, her eyes burned under gaslight. Her ladies noticed the burden. One wrote in a private note that Beatrice's hand never seems at rest. Another described the princess rubbing her wrist during dinner, exhausted but silent. Court records show the Queen rarely adjusted the pace. The emotional strain ran even deeper. Victoria did not filter herself much with Beatrice. Letters to other children complain about politics and servants. Letters to Beatrice carried raw guilt and raw grief. The Queen unloaded her loneliness on the one daughter who could not leave. She wrote about feeling abandoned by her older children. She described Beatrice as the only comfort in a world full of disappointment. To a young woman, that sounds like love and a constant threat folded together. Female betrayal played out in slow motion. Beatrice's sisters saw the pattern and mostly let it stand. They offered sympathy. Then they used Beatrice's presence to avoid duty visits themselves. Beatrice's with Mama became their shield. If baby was there, they could stay away. Official histories claim Beatrice chose to stay with her mother. Private letters complicate that simple claim. By 1884, Beatrice was 27. She was still baby. She finally fell in love. She announced her intention to marry Prince Henry of Battenberg. Victoria's response was not argument or rage. It was silence, 7 months of it. No spoken words from mother to daughter inside the same house. Messages were sent by handwritten notes instead of speech. Staff and family recorded a deliberate freeze-out. That silence is one of the cruelest details in the story. No shouting, no dramatic scene, just a slow, perfect suffocation. Beatrice had to eat at her mother's table while ignored. She walked into drawing rooms where Victoria spoke around her. Other women in the household witnessed it all. Ladies in waiting watched the Queen pass her daughter and address only the maid behind her. Not one person intervened. It was the Queen's house. Their jobs depended on staying out of it. Female solidarity evaporated under the pressure of rank and fear. Governesses who had once comforted Beatrice as a child now looked away. The marriage only happened after a tense negotiation. Victoria finally agreed on one brutal condition. Beatrice and Henry would live with her, not nearby, not in a neighbouring estate, under the same roof. The pattern hardened completely here. Beatrice would marry, but the Queen would keep physical possession. Husband, children, and personal happiness could exist only inside Victoria's orbit. Henry accepted the arrangement, at least publicly. He joined the royal household. He took on minor duties. He played the agreeable son-in-law. Privately, Henry chafed under the control. He was a prince, yet always second to an old woman's mood and a daughter's obedience. The emotional triangle could not hold steady forever. Henry wanted active service. He wanted travel. He wanted a life beyond Osborne and Windsor. Victoria resisted every request that took Beatrice away from her. Prince, Princess and Queen circled the same arguments repeatedly. In 1895, Henry finally left. He sought active duty to West Africa, joining the Ashanti expedition. Court records show Victoria hated the entire idea. She wrote worried notes. She alternately demanded updates and expressed resentment. Beatrice, as usual, stood in the middle of it all. She translated Henry's restlessness on one side. She translated Victoria's fear on the other. Henry caught malaria on campaign. He died on the way home, on board ship. Witness testimony states Beatrice received the news like every royal woman before her. Surrounded by etiquette, watched by staff. Henry's body eventually reached home. Beatrice's life narrowed even further. Victoria grieved her son-in-law, but she did not loosen her grip. Now Beatrice was both widowed daughter and live-in companion. More alone, more essential, more permanently trapped. The darkness of their relationship did not end with Victoria's death in 1901. In some ways, it deepened and twisted afterward, because that is when the editing began. Queen Victoria wrote obsessively throughout her life. Millions of words across decades, daily journals from girlhood through her widowhood. She recorded private feelings about children, ministers, and intimate companions. Those journals should have been a historian's goldmine. Instead, they passed through one filter: Beatrice. After Victoria's death, Beatrice was appointed literary executor for the diaries. The task sounded honourable. Protect Mama's privacy. Prepare selections for publication. In practice, it became a long, quiet mutilation of the historical record. The process was physical and brutal. The original volumes were brought to Beatrice one by one. She sat with scissors, pens, and fresh notebooks. First, she copied selected passages by hand into new volumes. Then she cut out anything deemed unsuitable. Pages were literally removed from the originals. Lines were struck through. Names were softened. Incidents were erased. Feelings were ruthlessly toned down. When she finished a section, the original was often destroyed. Some volumes were burned. Others were shredded. Huge stretches of the Queen's life simply vanished. The sanitized versions, in Beatrice's handwriting, replaced the Queen's originals. For years, no one outside the family realized the scale of the operation. Researchers later described opening a Victorian journal. They found not the Queen's voice. They found the daughter's careful script. What disappeared? Clues survive around the edges. Letters from other family members refer to passages that no longer exist. Marginal notes hint at conflicts now missing. The most obvious target was Victoria's relationship with John Brown. Brown began as a Highland servant. He became the Queen's constant attendant. He walked with her. He guarded her. He spoke to her with startling bluntness. Courtiers despised his influence. Some of Victoria's own children resented him intensely. Gossip at the time went further. Rumours called him the Queen's stallion. Whispers suggested a secret marriage, a shared bed, a second great love after Albert. Victoria wrote about Brown openly in her journals, affectionate, grateful, sometimes almost worshipful language. She referred to him as the best, truest heart. After his death, she grieved him with the same obsessive intensity shown for Albert. Those original pages would have shown a human woman, vulnerable, lonely, clinging to a rough-spoken servant. They might also have confirmed exactly how far the relationship went. The sanitized journals say almost nothing. Brown shrinks into the background, mentioned briefly, drained of emotion. Sequences that contemporary letters describe: long walks, private conversations, nights of shared watch, recede or vanish entirely. Beatrice's editing knife did not just protect modesty. It protected an image. Victoria as perpetual widow, faithful only to Albert. Any hint that her mother's grief ever changed shape threatened the family's entire story. Beatrice erased other things too: angry outbursts at children, sharp criticisms of world leaders, complaints about ministers who later became national heroes, private pettiness that would have thrilled readers and embarrassed descendants. The cover-up served several masters at once. It protected the monarchy's dignity. It shielded Beatrice's own role as lifelong comfort from scrutiny. It punished siblings whose behaviour Victoria had once condemned. Female dynamics hide between these lines. Imagine being the daughter who sacrificed her marriage, her location, and her normal life to please a mother. That same mother wrote pages praising a male servant's companionship more warmly than any child. Those pages then land on the daughter's desk, scissors ready. The temptation to adjust history becomes terrifyingly understandable. Remove the passages where Brown seems irreplaceable. Tone down the entries where other daughters are cursed as ungrateful. Soften the contrast between the adored man and the exploited girl. Beatrice's censorship became a final conversation she controlled. She could not defy Victoria in life. In death, she could at least decide what survived. Other royal women watched the process from a distance. Some approved. They feared scandal. They feared Republican sentiment. better to present Victoria as dull but respectable than intensely human. No one stopped Beatrice. No one appointed a co-executor to balance her hand. Female complicity entered quietly through trust and convenience. "Baby knows best what Mama wanted," they effectively said. Historians later paid the steep price. Documents that could have clarified entire episodes of late Victorian politics were gone. Scholars compared private letters with published journals. They found gaps like missing teeth. A sentence in one source hinted at a quarrel. The journal entry for that day turned into polite blandness. The jackpot cluster comes here. 3 facts side by side show the scale of the loss. First, Victoria's original diaries ran to over 100 volumes. They covered more than 60 years. Only a fraction now exist in her hand. Second, Beatrice's edited copies sometimes compress whole weeks into safe summaries. Moments of rage, despair, jealousy, or desire vanish. They turn into flat phrases like "felt unwell" or "very much upset." Third, archivists discovered that Beatrice's copy does not match references in other correspondence. She altered not only tone, but entire events. A sharp remark about a child becomes a general note on family worries. A political tantrum becomes difficulty with ministers. The woman honoured as guardian of her mother's memory quietly reshaped that memory beyond recognition. There is one more dark angle. The task completely consumed Beatrice's remaining life. She did not finish in a year. She did not finish in 5 years. The editing project stretched across decades. As other widows travelled, remarried, or refashioned themselves, Beatrice sat among papers. New reigns, diseases, and wars passed outside her window. Inside, she moved a pen slowly across old words, trying to control what survived. Age hardened her isolation. Younger royal women found her fussy and distant. Some joked that she smelled of old papers and black crepe. They enjoyed the freedom she never had. Better education, better health, looser expectations. They rarely questioned the archive she curated. The living, flawed grandmother in the journals no longer existed for them. Beatrice finally died in 1944. Europe burned in a world war. In the royal archives, her filtered journals remained. Generations read them as if they were genuine. Biographers based entire books on the cleaned pages. Only slowly did the truth emerge. Comparisons with letters, drafts, and surviving fragments revealed the scale of removal. Researchers noticed multiple hands in the journals. They saw small notes hinting at burned originals. Piece by piece, the story of Beatrice's censorship came into focus. Princess Beatrice enters most popular histories as the soft one, the quiet, dutiful daughter in cream dresses walking slowly beside an old queen. The reality carries much sharper edges. She inhabited a cage built by maternal grief and royal duty. When she finally tried to open the door, the response was 7 months of crushing silence. Her husband escaped for a moment of active service. He came back as a corpse. Her compensation was power over paper, never power over her own life. Her greatest betrayal was not of her mother. It was of every reader who ever believed the official version of Victoria's story. The readers who thought they were seeing a queen's intimate mind. Yet Beatrice was also betrayed. By a family that treated her as a permanent emotional crutch. By sisters who let her bear the burden because it spared them. By a system that dressed female sacrifice up as duty. Then it applauded the result. The pattern remains familiar. A powerful woman's darkness polished away for public comfort. A quieter woman doing the polishing at the cost of herself. Other women hovered around the edges. They chose survival over solidarity. Wealth and royal blood did not save Beatrice from being used up. She became both caretaker and cleaner of another person's life. They did not protect Victoria from having her truth sliced apart into acceptable fragments. All they ensured was that the cutting happened in silk-draped rooms. It happened with good ink. And it took nearly half a century before anyone realized how much had disappeared. Her life was shortened, her purpose redefined, her legacy became a stack of altered documents. That is the dark, quiet price of devotion.